David Carter opened the retirement calculator at 6:18 on a Thursday morning. The kitchen was still dark. The heat had just kicked on. His wife was upstairs, still asleep, and the house had that thin, early morning silence where every small sound feels louder than it should. The click of the laptop, the hum of the refrigerator, the spoon against the coffee mug. David had not opened the calculator because he was panicking. That would have made the story cleaner. He opened it because he thought it was time to be responsible. He was 59. He had worked for almost 4 decades. He had raised children, paid bills, fixed things before they became disasters, and saved what he could while life kept asking for money in 100 reasonable ways. His retirement account balance was $214,680. Not millions, not nothing, a serious number. A number big enough to feel like proof. He typed it in. Then he added the small pension from an old employer. He added the mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, fuel, prescriptions, property taxes, home repairs, the money he still sent his daughter when her rent jumped again. He did not add vacations or luxury. He did not add a sports car. He did not add fantasy spending. He added the life they were already living. Then he clicked calculate. The screen paused for half a second. That half second was the last moment David still believed the problem was probably manageable. Then the number appeared. Estimated retirement income, $2,840 a month. Estimated expenses, $4,790 a month. Monthly gap, $1,950. David stared at it. Not because he did not understand arithmetic, because he understood it too clearly. The life he had built cost almost $2,000 more per month than the retirement he could afford. No crisis, no scandal, no reckless collapse, just a quiet machine telling him that the years had not converted into safety the way he had assumed. He clicked the assumptions tab. Inflation, healthcare, taxes, withdrawal rate, life expectancy. Every word looked polite. Every word took something from him. David leaned back in the chair and looked toward the window, where the sky was still dark blue over the backyard. He did not feel poor. He did not feel stupid. He did not feel like a man who had ruined his life. He felt betrayed. That was the first uncomfortable truth. Betrayal does not always come from someone lying to your face. Sometimes it comes from discovering that the rules changed while everyone kept using the old language. David had been told the story his whole life. Work hard, save steadily, buy the house, stay employed, retire with dignity. He had done enough of that to believe he was at least close. Then one calculator turned the story around. It was not asking him, how much did you save? It was asking, what replaces the paycheck? That question is brutal because bills do not care about your balance. Bills care about arrival. Money has to arrive every month. Mortgage money, food money, healthcare money, tax money, insurance money, repair money. Money for the life that continues after the farewell cake, after the office emails stop, after the employer no longer deposits anything into your account. That was the difference David had missed. He had watched the pile. He had not tested the paycheck. $214,680 looked respectable on a statement. But when he asked that pile to behave like monthly income, it became fragile. If he withdrew around 4% a year, the account produced a little over $8,500 before taxes. A little over $700 a month. $700. Less than the mortgage. Less than groceries and insurance together. Less than one ugly home repair. The account balance looked like security until he asked it to pay bills. And that is where the retirement lie begins. Retirement is not about the size of the pile. It is about whether the pile can become a paycheck before the old paycheck dies. David would later reduce that monthly gap from $1,950 to $860. But not by pretending, not by positive thinking, not by finding a magic investment. He reduced it only after he stopped asking the comforting question and started asking the dangerous one. What has to arrive every month when my employer stops paying me? That question changes everything. And if you are anywhere near midlife, late career, or supporting people who still depend on your income, it is not optional. Because the future does not usually arrive as a dramatic disaster. It arrives as a normal Thursday morning, a laptop, a calculator, a coffee gone cold, and one number that tells you the paycheck dies before the bills do. David Carter was not the type of man people use as a warning because his life was foolish. That would be too easy. He was a regional service manager for a company that maintained commercial buildings, heating systems, lighting systems, plumbing emergencies, fire inspections, the work nobody notices until something fails. In his 20s, David was the younger guy climbing ladders, carrying tools, answering emergency calls, and learning which noises meant danger and which ones only sounded expensive. By 59, he managed crews. He knew which technicians needed exact instructions and which ones needed room. He knew which clients would complain before paying and which ones would pay before complaining. He could walk through a mechanical room and hear trouble before a spreadsheet admitted there was a problem. He was not glamorous. He was useful. That mattered to him more than he would have admitted. Useful was how David understood himself. At work, people needed his judgment. At home, people needed his steadiness. His wife depended on his calm when bills arrived. His kids still came to him when life got complicated. His employer expected him to know what was breaking before it broke publicly. He was tired, yes, but he was not irrelevant. Not yet. His salary was decent, not rich. Decent. Enough for a modest home in a commuter town. Enough for 2 aging cars. Enough for insurance, repairs, groceries, family birthdays, school expenses years earlier, and the endless small costs of being a normal household. Enough to save into the workplace plan, though not always as much as the retirement article said he should have. That was the trap. David's life had not been wrecked by one irresponsible decision. It had been assembled from hundreds of defensible ones. The house was not excessive. It was close to the school. The second car was not luxury. It was how 2 adults got to work. The boiler replacement was not indulgence. It was heat. The dental bill was not optional. The insurance renewal was not lifestyle inflation. Helping his daughter was not weakness. It was being a father in a housing market that kept treating rent like a threat. Every cost had a reason. Every reason sounded normal. And normal is exactly what makes the story dangerous. Middle-class pressure does not usually arrive wearing a villain's mask. It arrives as ordinary life. A grocery bill that is $20 higher. A car repair that lands 2 weeks before the insurance renewal. A parent who needs help. A child who is technically grown but not financially stable. A roof that waits until the worst possible moment to remind you it exists. At 39, a leaking roof is annoying. At 59, it feels personal. Because every major expense starts asking a different question. Are you spending current income, or are you stealing from future safety? For years, David used his retirement account as emotional medicine. When work felt exhausting, he checked the balance. When a younger manager made some smug comment about modernization, he checked the balance. When his knee hurt after climbing stairs, he checked the balance. The number calmed him. $200,000 was more money than he had ever held in one place. It looked serious. It looked like evidence. It looked like the decades had not been wasted. Then the calculator did something cruel. It translated pride into cash flow. That was the first crack. David had saved money, but he had not built income. Those are not the same thing. A balance sits there. A paycheck arrives. A balance can fall. A paycheck can absorb. A balance has to be managed, withdrawn, taxed, protected, and timed. A paycheck simply lands on schedule until the day it does not. For most of David's adult life, the paycheck had been the shock absorber. If groceries rose, the paycheck softened it. If the car broke, the paycheck gave the household a way to recover. If the insurance renewal was ugly, the paycheck made the pain temporary. If his daughter needed help, the paycheck allowed him to be generous and worried at the same time. The paycheck did more than fund life. It hid the fragility underneath. Retirement removes that absorber. The bills keep their rhythm. The mortgage does not pause because a man served his company for 30 years. The grocery store does not lower prices because a household is entering a fixed income phase. Insurance does not become gentle. Healthcare does not become predictable. Taxes do not become sentimental. The bill calendar keeps moving. And if the paycheck has not been replaced, retirement does not feel like freedom. It feels like unpaid financial labor. That was why the title of David's life suddenly became literal. He might stop working for his employer, but he would still work the withdrawals, work the tax estimates, work the grocery receipt, work the fear, work the decision of whether to sell investments in a bad market just to keep normal life moving. He would stop getting paid, but the work would continue. The old retirement promise had not disappeared all at once. That would have been easier to notice. It faded quietly. David remembered his father's retirement. His father had worked in manufacturing. Not a wealthy man, not an investor, not a person who talked about asset allocation at dinner. He came home tired and smelled faintly of oil and metal. But when he retired, there was a pension check. Not huge, not luxurious, but real. It arrived. A guaranteed check creates a floor. It does not make life perfect, but it keeps every month from becoming a negotiation with fear. David did not inherit that same floor. He inherited the language of the old system, but not the machinery. The pension became an account. The account became a balance. The balance became his responsibility. His responsibility became a maze. How much should he save? How should he invest? When should he retire? How much could he withdraw? What if the market dropped right after he stopped working? What if inflation kept moving? What if healthcare cost more than expected? What if his wife needed care? What if taxes took more than planned? What if he lived much longer than his money was built to last? What if his employer decided before he was ready that experience had become too expensive? The new system called this choice. But choice without protection can become risk with better branding. Nobody called David into a meeting at 42 and said, "The deal has changed. Employers will carry less of the promise now. You will carry more of it yourself." It happened through benefits portals, plan documents, investment menus, contribution percentages, friendly emails about taking control of your future, frozen pensions, default settings, small print, and the quiet assumption that if a normal person was disciplined enough, educated enough, healthy enough, lucky enough, and employed long enough, he could personally solve a problem that used to be shared by employers, pensions, public programs, and family structures. David did not notice the transfer when he was younger. That is not an excuse. It is reality. The present is loud. The future whispers. The mortgage leaves now. The client calls now. The kid needs money now. The car breaks now. The roof leaks now. Retirement can wait until next month. Then next month becomes next year. Then next year becomes 59. And suddenly the future is not whispering anymore. It is sitting at your kitchen table with a $1,950 monthly gap. That morning did not end when David closed the laptop. The number followed him into the day. At work, he walked through a commercial building where one of his crews was replacing a failing pump. A younger operations director was there, talking fast, tapping on a tablet, using new software to summarize problems David could hear with his own ears. David watched him speak to the client with that polished confidence younger managers sometimes have before the building teaches them humility. Then the director said something that landed harder than he probably intended. "We need to start documenting David's process before he decides to disappear on us." Everyone laughed. David smiled. He knew it was meant as a joke, but the word disappear stayed with him. Because that was the fantasy, wasn't it? One day he would disappear from work. No more emergency calls, no more complaints, no more weekend breakdowns, no more responsibility for pipes, wires, crews, clients, and budgets. But on the drive back, the joke turned in his head. If he disappeared from work, what appeared in its place? A deposit? A plan? A floor? Or just a balance that had to be sliced carefully month after month? That was when another trap surfaced. His backup plan was not really a plan, it was a sentence. "I'll just work longer." For years that sentence had comforted him. If the numbers were tight, he would work until 65, maybe 67, maybe part-time after that. It sounded responsible, it sounded practical, it sounded adult. Then he started looking around with less denial. Some older workers stayed because they wanted to. Some stayed because they had to. Some wanted to stay and were quietly moved aside, not in dramatic ways. No security guard, no box of belongings, just fewer important projects, more succession planning, more comments about energy, more meetings where experience was praised in public and bypassed in private. David had seen it. He had even participated in it. He had recommended younger supervisors for roles because they were cheaper, faster with systems, easier to mold, and more willing to answer emails at night without complaint. He had called it planning. Now he saw the other side. Working longer can be useful. It can be a bridge. It can improve social security timing, preserve savings, maintain health coverage, and keep purpose alive. But working longer by itself is not a retirement plan. It is a request for permission. Permission from your body, permission from your employer, permission from the labor market, permission from your family not to need you in some other way. That realization hit David harder than the market assumptions, because the market was abstract. His knee was not. His company was not. His industry was not. His wife's health, his daughter's instability, and the quiet age math inside every employer's budget were not abstract. He had trusted the backup plan that depended on everyone else cooperating. That afternoon he heard two managers discussing restructuring near the copy room. Nothing official, nothing about him directly, just language, efficiency, headcount, coverage model, younger bench, knowledge transfer. He walked past as if he had heard nothing, but he had heard enough. The most dangerous part of his plan was not the market. It was the phrase, I'll just work longer. I'll just spend less. I'll just figure it out. I'll just sell something. I'll just help the kids a little less. I'll just retire later." Those words are seductive because they sound calm, but often they are fear wearing a practical jacket. A week later, David stopped at the supermarket after work. It was not a dramatic day. That was the point. Milk, eggs, bread, chicken, fruit, dog food, laundry detergent, coffee. A few things his wife had texted him. Nothing special. The total was $186. He stood at the checkout half a second too long, card in hand, because the number felt rude. The cashier was waiting. The people behind him were waiting. David tapped the card and said nothing. Back in the parking lot, he sat in the car without turning the engine on. Rain moved across the windshield in thin lines. He opened his banking app. Mortgage, electric, gas, car insurance, mobile phone, internet, fuel, pharmacy, grocery store again, hardware store. The transactions were not dramatic. That made them worse. They were ordinary, repeating, boring, relentless. Retirement planning had trained him to think in big numbers. Total savings, total portfolio, total net worth. But life attacks in small repeating withdrawals. The bills were already real. The retirement income was still theoretical. He imagined the first month without salary. At first, maybe it would feel good. Sleep later, walk the dog in daylight, fix the shed door, have lunch with his wife on a weekday, feel for a few days like the brochures had been telling the truth. Then the mortgage would land, then utilities, then insurance, then groceries, then the credit card, then prescriptions, then a car service, then a birthday gift. Then something in the house would make a sound it was not supposed to make. And there it was. Retirement not as freedom, retirement as cash flow pressure. Cash flow is the money that actually arrives and survives after claims. Not promised money, not the account balance, not home equity trapped inside walls, not a spreadsheet number that becomes taxable when touched. Usable money, monthly money, money that can stand between you and the bill calendar. David had assets. He had a retirement account. He had home equity. He had cars. He had experience. He had tools in the garage. He had a reputation. But assets do not automatically buy groceries. Some have to be sold. Some trigger taxes. Some are locked inside accounts. Some change value at the exact moment you need them. Some, like a house, protect you from rent, but still demand repairs, insurance, taxes, maintenance, and property bills. That night, David looked at the house differently. He stood in the hallway and saw the marks on the wall where the kids' heights had been measured. He saw the kitchen tile they had chosen during a better year. He saw the bedroom door his son had once slammed so hard the frame still had a small scar. The house had memories, but it also had invoices. That thought felt almost disrespectful. It was also true. A home can make retirement safer if it lowers monthly expenses. A home can make retirement harder if it keeps demanding cash after income falls. Equity can be wealth. It is not automatically food, medicine, or freedom. Later, David would discover that one ordinary bill mattered more than the size of his retirement account. But he was not ready to face that yet. First, he had to understand why normal costs become more dangerous when income stops being normal. Inflation did not kick down his door. It slipped into the receipt. The same breakfast cost more. The same detergent cost more. The same insurance renewed higher. The same repair quote sounded insulting. Inflation is the slow humiliation of needing more money to buy the same life. When you are working, inflation hurts, but wages can sometimes move. Not enough, not fairly, not quickly, but they can move. In retirement, inflation attacks a weaker target. If income is fixed, prices do not need to explode to make you poorer. They only need to keep walking. David noticed it most in the small things: coffee, eggs, insurance, prescriptions, the parts store. The contractor who used to give him a rough estimate and now wanted half up front because everyone's materials cost had become unpredictable. Every increase was explainable. That did not make it harmless. Healthcare carried a different fear. At 59, David did not think of himself as old, but his body had started sending memos. A knee that complained on stairs. Blood pressure his doctor watched. Dental work he postponed because the roof had come first. Sleep that did not repair him the way it used to. A friend from work had retired early and spent his first year out navigating appointments, prescriptions, insurance calls, and waiting rooms. Another had delayed retirement because leaving work meant losing employer health coverage before the timing made sense. Healthcare is not only about sickness, it is about timing, premiums, deductibles, prescriptions, dental, out-of-pocket costs, the price of needing help when independence starts to crack. David could budget for groceries, he could not easily budget for frailty. A roof has a quote, a car repair has an invoice, a spouse needing care has a whole new life attached to it. That is the kind of cost calculators struggle to make emotionally real. Then came taxes. David had spent years treating his retirement account like private storage, money earned, money saved, money waiting. Then he realized some of the money had a silent partner. Tax deferred does not mean tax free. The tax had been postponed, not erased. That distinction matters. If David pulled from certain accounts, part of the withdrawal could be taxable. If he pulled more to cover the tax, he could create more taxable income. Later, required withdrawals could force money out on a schedule he did not choose. If one spouse died, the survivor could face a different tax situation. The account balance was not the spendable balance. There is no useful way to soften that. If money sits in a tax-deferred retirement account, the headline number can comfort you more than it should. Part of it may belong to future taxes. That is not politics. It is arithmetic. David hated that arithmetic because it made his safety number smaller. But retirement punishes comforting lies. The bill that changed everything was not dramatic. It was the mortgage. He had always thought of it as part of the house, almost like weather, a fixed thing, a normal thing, a respectable thing. But when he rebuilt the month without salary, the mortgage stopped looking normal. It looked like a machine. Every month, before groceries, before gifts, before car repairs, before one enjoyable dinner, before one generous act, the mortgage demanded money. It did not care whether the market was down. It did not care whether David was tired. It did not care whether retirement income was delayed. It did not care that the house held birthdays, arguments, Christmas mornings, sick days, and every ordinary year that had made the family feel real. The mortgage was not sentimental. It was a claim. That was the ordinary bill that mattered more than the size of the retirement account, because every fixed bill raises the amount of paycheck that must be replaced. A retired household with low fixed bills needs less income to feel stable. A retired household with heavy fixed bills can feel poor while owning things that look valuable. Fixed expenses are quiet enemies. They do not shout. They do not embarrass you in public. They simply keep arriving. Insurance, phone plans, car costs, subscriptions, storage, old services, debt payments, property taxes, the house. They vote against your freedom every month. And the worst number is not always the gap you see. It is the number you never calculated. How much of your life is already spoken for before the month begins? David did not answer that question immediately because he did not want the answer. So the question waited for him at the kitchen table. His wife noticed before he spoke. Of course she did. People who lived together for decades learned the difference between tired and heavy. One night, she found him staring at the laptop after dinner. The plates were still in the sink. The kitchen light was too bright. The house was quiet in that way houses become quiet when adult children are gone and bills remain. She asked, "What's going on with you?" His automatic answer was ready, "Nothing." That is what men like David often say when the truth feels too large to explain. Nothing means, "I am trying to solve it before it becomes yours." Nothing means, "I am ashamed." Nothing means, "I do not yet have language that will not scare both of us." This time, he did not say it. He looked at the screen, then at her, then back at the screen. He wanted to protect her from the number, but he understood, with a dull pressure in his chest, that hiding the number was not protection. It was delay. He turned the laptop around. He showed her the estimated income, $2,840 a month. He showed her the expenses, $4,790 a month. He showed her the gap, $1,950. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. She did not get angry. That almost made it worse. Anger would have given him something to push against. Instead, she looked at the screen like it had translated their life into a language neither of them wanted to learn. Then she asked the question that cut through every spreadsheet. Were we ever actually safe? David looked down at the table. The word safe felt too large for the room. He thought of every time he had said, "We're okay." Every statement he had opened for reassurance. Every bill paid on time. Every responsible choice that had felt like progress because nothing had collapsed. He said, "I thought we were." She kept looking at the number. "I thought we were doing okay." "So did I," he said. That was the emotional center of the retirement lie. Not a reckless man being punished. Not a careless couple facing consequences. Two responsible people sitting in a kitchen, realizing they had confused stability with safety. They had confused paying this month's bills with being ready to pay bills after the paycheck stopped. They had confused income with wealth. They had confused a balance with a system. The shame in that room was not loud. It was heavier than that. David felt ashamed that he had not known. Ashamed that he had checked the balance instead of the monthly gap. Ashamed that he still needed work. Ashamed that he was tired of the same work he still needed. Ashamed that his wife had to see the number with him. But something changed after she asked the question. The fear did not disappear. It became measurable. That matters. Fog makes people freeze. A number gives them something to attack. They did not solve retirement that night. They did something more important. They stopped pretending. The next morning, David did not open a retirement article. He opened the bank app. That was less inspiring. It was also more useful. He and his wife went line by line through the month. Not the dream month. Not the punishment month. The real month. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, transportation, healthcare, property taxes, repairs, phones, internet, debt, family support. A modest dignity layer because surviving is not the same as living. A meal out sometimes. Gifts. A small trip if the year allowed it. Room to be human. The number was still $4,790. David hated seeing it clearly, but clarity has one advantage over comfort: it can be worked. He wrote at the top of the page, "Paycheck Replacement Plan," not because the name sounded impressive, because it forced the correct question. A retirement plan that does not replace the paycheck is not a retirement plan. It is a balance waiting to be tested by bills. The first move was simple: calculate the real monthly replacement number. That meant starting with the month, not the account. What has to arrive every month when the employer stops paying? What bills survive the farewell party? What costs are fixed? What costs can move? What costs are hiding because they arrive quarterly, yearly, or only when something breaks? David and his wife built the number honestly, not too optimistic, not so harsh that retirement became a joyless punishment. The real household need. Then they listed income. Estimated retirement income, $2,840. Small pension, social security estimate, conservative withdrawals, cash reserves, possible bridge income, then subtract. No drama, no denial, just arithmetic. The first gap was $1,950. That was not a moral failure. It was a design problem, and design problems can be worked. The second move was separating survival money from growth money. Before this, David had treated retirement savings like one pot, one number, one future. That made every market drop feel like the whole plan was being attacked. Now different dollars needed different jobs. Money needed soon had to protect survival. Money needed later had to fight inflation. Emergency money had to absorb shocks. Growth money had to stay invested long enough to matter. This did not turn David into a market expert. It gave him basic control. A dollar needed next year should not be forced to behave like a dollar needed at 83. That one idea reduced panic. He and his wife built a cash reserve target. Cash was not exciting. Cash did not make him feel clever. But selling investments during a bad market to buy groceries is a terrible kind of helplessness. Survival money buys time. Time prevents forced decisions. Forced decisions are where retirement plans break. This is also where the market risk became real without becoming technical. David learned that a bad year during work is painful, but salary helps you wait. A bad year early in retirement is different. If the account falls and withdrawals continue, the damage can compound. You are selling from a wounded account while still needing the account to heal. That is the plain version of sequence risk. The order of returns matters because the bills do not stop while the market recovers. David did not need a lecture. He needed to avoid being forced to sell weakness. So the cash reserve was not laziness, it was defense. The third move was building income layers. David had been searching quietly for one answer that would save him. One bigger balance, one perfect withdrawal rate, one social security decision, one future part-time job, one housing move. But modern retirement rarely arrives as one clean check. It is usually a patchwork. The mistake is pretending the patchwork will assemble itself. So David started designing the layers: the old pension, social security timing, conservative withdrawals, cash reserves, possible consulting, flexible spending in bad market years, tax planning, housing choices. None of those pieces was magic. Together they reduced pressure. That was the point. A bridge does not stand because one beam is heroic. It stands because enough supports share the load. David ran social security timing scenarios. He looked at what changed if he claimed earlier, what changed if he delayed, what changed if his wife's situation affected the household number. He did not treat the estimate as a miracle. He treated it as one beam. Then he looked at the small pension, then withdrawals, then cash, then taxes, then possible bridge work. Every imperfect layer made the others less fragile. The fourth move was killing or shrinking fixed bills before the paycheck died. This was the ugly work. No fantasy, no impressive chart. Just two adults staring at expenses that had become so normal they no longer felt optional. Insurance, phone plans, subscriptions, car costs, old services, the storage unit, the mortgage, the second car question, the money they sent their daughter. That last one hurt most. It was easy to cancel a subscription. It was harder to admit that helping an adult child without boundaries could damage their own survival. David hated even saying it. His wife hated hearing it. But avoiding the conversation would not make the math kinder. It would only move the pain into the future. So they spoke with their daughter, not coldly, clearly. They would help with emergencies. They would not become the invisible third income in her life forever. The conversation was uncomfortable. It also lowered the lie. A retirement plan built on silent resentment and hidden support payments is not honest. Then they looked at the house. This was harder than David expected. Could they overpay while income still arrived? Could they refinance only if the numbers truly made sense? Could they downsize later without treating it as humiliation? Could they sell if the house kept demanding more income than retirement could support? The house had memories, but memories do not pay property taxes. That sentence felt harsh. It was also adult. They did not decide to sell. They decided to stop treating the house as sacred and start treating it as part of the plan. That distinction mattered. A symbol can trap you. A decision can be managed. They reviewed the cars. Replace one now? Build a repair fund? Reduce driving? Keep both only if the numbers justified it. Every fixed bill cut or reduced did one clean thing. It lowered the monthly replacement number. Every dollar removed from the permanent month was a dollar of income they no longer had to create. That is not glamorous. It is powerful. No motivational quote can compete with a bill that no longer exists. The fifth move was building a bridge before full retirement. David had always imagined retirement as a switch. Friday employed, Monday retired, a clean break, maybe a party, maybe a few awkward speeches, then freedom. Now that switch looked dangerous. A hard stop can work if the income system is already strong. David's was not, so he built a bridge while he still had leverage. That phrase mattered, while he still had leverage, not after the company pushed him out, not after his health failed, not after fear made him desperate. Now. He spoke with his employer about shifting gradually from full operational responsibility into training, compliance reviews, emergency consulting, and project handovers. He did not beg. He proposed value. That difference mattered. He updated his resume, not because he wanted to leave immediately, but because depending completely on one employer at 59 was too fragile. He listed contacts who might need part-time technical oversight. He mapped healthcare timing. He spoke with a tax professional. He and his wife tested a fake retirement month before the paycheck disappeared. That test was miserable. It was also one of the most useful things they did. They pretended the salary deposit did not exist. They asked which bills would land first, which account would pay them, which expense would be cut, which decision could wait, which could not. The first test month failed, not catastrophically. Enough. Groceries were higher than expected. Insurance hit at the wrong time. A small home repair appeared. A family birthday added pressure. One old subscription renewed annually and annoyed them both. The old David would have called that failure. The new David called it information. The point was not to pretend retirement would be smooth. The point was to find the rough parts while the paycheck was still alive. A bridge that has never been walked across is just a drawing. The sixth move surprised him. It had nothing to do with money at first. It had to do with usefulness. David had spent years saying he was tired of work. And he was. Tired of emergency calls. Tired of software changes. Tired of younger managers using new words for old problems. Tired of being responsible for systems he did not control. But being tired of work is not the same as being ready for nothing. That realization scared him in a different way. He imagined a Tuesday morning in retirement. No schedule, no calls, no one asking his opinion, no building needing him, no technician waiting for a decision, no client angry enough to prove his expertise still mattered. The fantasy was peace. The fear was disappearance. Retirement does not only remove income, it can remove routine, status, structure, social contact, confidence, and usefulness. Work gives more than money. It gives rhythm, a place to stand, problems to solve, people to disappoint, help, argue with, and guide. Even complaints can be proof that you still belong somewhere. David did not want to keep carrying the old job forever, but he did not want to vanish either. So one Saturday, he visited a local trade training program. At first, he told himself it was networking. That was only partly true. The real reason was simpler. Younger workers still needed what he knew, and David needed proof that usefulness did not have to end when employment changed. He spoke with the program director about guest sessions, not full-time teaching, not a new career fantasy, just occasional paid training, mentoring, and technical workshops. A few hours, a little income, a reason to leave the house, a way to stay connected without carrying the full weight of his old role. That was the bridge he had not expected. Not just money, identity, structure, permission to become someone other than exhausted or retired. This is what calculators miss. They can estimate income. They cannot tell you who you become when the email stops. A serious retirement plan has to protect cash flow and identity. The goal is not to escape work and sit in financial fear. The goal is to make work optional before work stops being offered. 6 months after the first calculator morning, David opened the laptop again. Same kitchen, same table, same house, same world, different man. Not because everything was solved, because he no longer expected the calculator to rescue him. He used it like a tool, not a judge. The original monthly gap had been $1,950. That number had felt like a hole in the floor. Now it had changed, not vanished, changed. After cutting and renegotiating fixed expenses, the household had reduced its monthly target. After changing the support arrangement with his daughter, the month became more honest. After reviewing the mortgage and housing options, the house stopped being a symbol and became a decision. After building a cash reserve, survival money had a job. After running social security timing, the income side became clearer. After planning conservative withdrawals, the account stopped pretending to be fully spendable. After speaking with a tax professional, the tax shadow became part of the map instead of a vague fear. After testing part-time consulting and training work, bridge income became modest but real. The gap that had been $1,950 was now $860. Still real, still serious, but no longer a black hole. It was a target. That was the difference. Before, the gap humiliated him. Now it instructed him. $860 meant the plan was not finished. It meant more fixed costs had to be challenged. It meant bridge work mattered. It meant healthcare timing could not be handled casually. It meant market risk had to be respected. It meant spending had to stay honest. It meant the house conversation was not over, but it did not mean they were helpless. David wrote the number down, not because he liked it, because it was true. And truth finally was better than reassurance. The world had not become fair. The old promise had not repaired itself. Pensions had not magically returned. Healthcare had not become simple. Inflation had not become polite. Taxes had not vanished. Longer life had not become cheaper. Employers had not become guarantees. But David could see the trap now. And once he could see it, he could stop walking toward it with his eyes closed. That is the part people misunderstand about retirement planning. It is not mainly about becoming rich. Rich helps, obviously. More money helps. A paid-off house helps. A pension helps. Good health helps. Luck helps more than people admit. But the deeper issue is design. Can your income survive without your employer? Can your fixed bills shrink before your paycheck does? Can your savings produce monthly cash without forcing terrible decisions? Can your healthcare timing survive reality? Can your tax plan survive withdrawals? Can your identity survive the loss of the role that made you feel useful? Can your marriage survive the numbers being spoken out loud? These are not glamorous questions. They are the questions that decide whether retirement becomes freedom or unpaid survival. David did not need a fantasy anymore. He needed a bridge. So do you. Because retirement is not the age when work stops. It is the moment your income has to survive without your employer. That is the line most people avoid until it is late. They ask when they can leave. They ask how much is in the account. They ask whether the market will recover. They ask whether they can hold on another year. Those questions matter. But the sharper question is underneath. What replaces the paycheck? Not emotionally, not someday, not in theory, monthly, after taxes, after healthcare, after groceries, after the house asks for money again, after inflation keeps walking, after the market has a bad year, after your employer stops being part of your life. The retirement lie is not that every person will be forced to work forever. Some people retire well. Some people stop working and build meaningful lives. Some people have enough income, health, flexibility, and structure to make retirement beautiful. The lie is that stopping work automatically creates freedom. It does not. Stopping work only removes the paycheck. Freedom begins when the paycheck has already been replaced by a system strong enough to carry the bills, the shocks, the taxes, the healthcare decisions, the long years, and the person you still need to become. David Carter started with a gap of $1,950. He did not erase it with optimism. He reduced it with a map. That is the only honest way through. The kitchen table will still be there. The calculator will still be there. The bills will still arrive. The mortgage will still ask for money. The grocery receipt will still get longer. The insurance renewal will still land. The tax bill will still wait its turn. The house will still need repairs. The body will still need care. The calendar will still need purpose. And the paycheck, the thing that made all of it feel manageable, will stop. That is why the bridge has to be built early, not after the farewell party, not after the first scary withdrawal, not after the market drops, not after the employer changes its mind, before. The brochure sold David a finish line. The calculator showed him a cliff. The plan gave him a bridge, and that is the real warning. You may stop working, but unless your income can survive without your employer, retirement can become the hardest unpaid job of your life. The paycheck dies before the bills do. Build the bridge before it does.